Good morning. Thank you all for being with us this morning. Before I start, let me say a couple of things. One is you're going to hear this morning from some extraordinary men and women who have served our country, who have fought for our country, and now are fighting for the right of all veterans to have a home and to end veteran homelessness. I just want you to see them for a moment. This is an extraordinary group of individuals who are standing up for all veterans today. Last night, Public Counsel, Inner City Law Center, the law firms of Brown, Goldstein, and Levy, and Robbins Kaplan LLP filed a groundbreaking federal civil rights lawsuit in federal district court here in Los Angeles to end veteran homelessness once and for all. The phrase homeless veteran should be an American oxymoron. As Americans, we take pride in calling our nation the home of the brave. But throughout our nation, and particularly in Los Angeles, far too many of our brave are homeless. Close to 4,000 in Los Angeles, to put a number on it, likely a conservative one. But in this homeless capital of the United States, these shameful numbers do not tell the whole story, not even close. That is a story of decades of betrayal of veterans by their government. First, in violating the terms of an 1888 deed that donated 388 acres of prime real estate in West Los Angeles for the exclusive and specific purpose of establishing a soldier's home for disabled war veterans. Then a betrayal in preventing them from living on their own land after a betrayal in violating the terms of the lease. Then a betrayal beginning in the 1960s of fencing veterans off of their own land, kicking them off of that land, and leasing their land at grossly below market rates for athletic fields, for an exclusive private school, and UCLA, oil drilling, a dog park, and other purposes having nothing to do with the well-being of veterans. Then, in breaching a 2015 agreement between the VA and veterans to build 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing for disabled veterans suffering brain trauma, PTSD, severe depression, and mental illness, all obtained, all contracted from their service to our government, leaving our veterans to struggle on Los Angeles's meanest streets in filth and foulness of rat-infested encampments, in living conditions that would not have been tolerated in war zones of Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan. As you will hear, many do not survive. Casualties not of war, but of their own government's neglect and disrespect. To date, since that 2015 agreement, the VA has built no new units of permanent supportive housing. The VA has not even put in sewer lines and other basics of infrastructure. To date, according to findings of the Office of the Inspector General of the VA in 2018 and 2021, the VA has instead still illegally operated leases on these veterans' West VA campus. Our veterans have been betrayed to by their leaders. Every president, regardless of party, every director of the VA eloquently pledges publicly to end veteran homelessness. But this oft-repeated lofty words are lies. Less than a week after Veterans Day 2022, we know this. We know that our military veterans are more likely to be homeless than any other group of Americans. Re-traumatized by circumstances of homelessness, more likely to develop life-threatening and life-ending diseases than even other unhoused individuals. As you will also hear, suicide predictably claims between 20 and 40 veteran lives every day, including on these streets. Mr. President, VA Director McDonough, it is long past time for veterans to stop fighting for a home, to stop fighting for the care they require as consequence of their fighting on behalf of all of us. If you truly want to end veteran homelessness, then begin by using their land for the construction of permanent supportive housing that this government and the VA have recognized as the only solution. Look, with a budget this year of more than $260 billion, the VA should find this eminently doable. It should find doable the ending of homelessness once and for all, in order that our veterans can access the mental and physical health services they desperately require and to which they are lawfully entitled. We bring this civil rights lawsuit out of necessity. Out of necessity to end the betrayals and to secure that housing. Veterans' entitlement under the law and by any standard of decency and humanity. These veterans, whom we are privileged to represent, proudly serve the government in its time of need. When will the government serve them in their time of need? Next week, Thanksgiving week, our veterans should no longer be homeless for the holidays. Chad?
Next up, we have Shad Mashad, founder and president of the National Veterans Foundation.
My name is Shad Mashad. I am the founder and president of the National Veterans Foundation. I started National Veterans Foundation over 37 years ago. And after I returned from Vietnam, where I served as a psych officer, a counselor to our troops who were fighting that war, the few of us who were on the front lines as psych officers and nurses could not treat all the many men and women who desperately needed mental health services for what they were going through. We did the best we could. At the 95th Evac Hospital in Nang in evac hospitals all over the country. We choppered off to many of those. Most often that meant giving peace of mind. I learned that from the most important thing I could do to show the vets that someone cares, that there are places they could share the horrors they experience. We're still experiencing. The worst part of war should not be coming home. I watched as vets landed in airports, but never landed in tranquility or peace or with the hope that anything would be better. Tragically, they were right. Soldiers and men, women returned struggling, debilitating and psychological and emotional hardships from their experiences in combat. They, like me, went to Vietnam to serve the people of our nation. We were young and often, like me, headstrong and confident in who we were. We came back changed in many ways that it was difficult or impossible to comprehend. We were no longer the persons we had started out as. We needed open arms and a home. When I came back to Los Angeles, I knew what my life's mission had to be. I knew I had to continue the work I had done in Vietnam, or tried to do in Vietnam. My book, recounting my experiences, Captain for Dark Mornings, is dedicated to all Vietnam veterans, and now all veterans. I have dedicated my life these past 52 years to them as well. I helped pioneer treatment techniques for what would later be known as PTSD. I founded and co-authored the Vet Center program, which passed as Public Law 96-22, now numbering over 300 centers across the nation. They were based on the vet-to-vet counseling model I developed on the streets of Los Angeles back in the 70s. I believe that has made a difference. What I'm proudest of, though, is the National Veterans Foundation over the years. We have assisted over 500 million veterans, their families, and children. From World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and wherever our vets have served. Our staff, all vets themselves, and I set up and manage the nation's oldest toll-free vet-to-vet crisis and information hotline. We have raised public awareness about veteran suicides, now around 20 a day or more, and we have successfully counseled many vets to prevent suicides. Not every call we take is a suicide call, but every call is a suicide prevention call. Each week, our NVF outreach team, we call them the street team, goes out to homeless encampments, which are scattered all over LA County, working the meanest streets in Los Angeles, where we find large communities with vets embedded in them. We bring food and water, sanitation supplies, and during the pandemic, supplies to minimize the risk. We were the only ones out on the streets. We see our brothers and sisters living in squalid conditions that are worse than I saw in Vietnam. We witnessed our brothers and sisters deteriorate before our eyes. Disease, mentally impaired, and urgent need of medical and psychological care. We have seen our brothers and sisters die out there because of the inhumane conditions far too often, because they have seen no way out other than to end their lives. We see this all the time, and the premature, unnatural deaths of our soldiers did not end in other lands. They happened here in America. You cannot ever come home if you are homeless. How is it that our city is the veterans' homeless capital of the United States? How is it that our government could mobilize to stop the spread of COVID, but will not mobilize to end veteran homelessness? I hope I live long enough to see the National Veterans Foundation close our shop because we are no longer needed. I am incensed every day that day has not yet come. The board of NVF supports this lawsuit. unanimously, and so do I and our staff. I do not sue the Veterans Administration lightly. When I went to Vietnam in 1970, I could never have imagined that 52 years later, men and women would fight to survive on the streets of Los Angeles and in our nation. These warriors in arms make me proud. I hope my government will finally do the same by serving our soldiers with the same love and respect with which they serve their nation. I hope our government chooses to join, not resist, their last and most important fight of all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rob Reynolds with advocacy group Vets. Thanks, Rob.
My name is Rob Reynolds. I'm an Iraq war veteran. I first came to the West LA VA in 2018, and when I got there, I was referred to go to combat treatment. And upon arriving, I had a service dog with me, and the VA told me I couldn't come in with a service dog, and I had actually shown up in the evening. It was like 8 p.m. And I remember asking, well, where do I go tonight? And they're like, you know, you can go to the Homeless Veteran Welcome Center in the morning. And I said again, well, where do I go tonight? Well, I wait to try to get into these programs. Had no answer. I then walked out of the hospital and I walked down Wilshire Boulevard with my bags, my dog, and I ran into some veterans that were sleeping on San Vicente Boulevard, right outside the gates of the VA. And the first veteran that came up to me said, what'd they tell you no for? And I was kind of shocked when that was said to me. And his name was Del Gills, a Marine veteran. And he's like, you know, come down with us. We'll take care of you for the night. And I just like, I couldn't even believe it. And I walked down San Vicente Boulevard, and there I see blankets and veterans sleeping on the ground, mattresses, no tents. And I asked, I was like, are these all veterans? And he said, yes. And it was at that point that I was just in complete shock. I couldn't believe something like that could go on in our country. I ended up getting into the VA, and, you know, I'm doing well now. But I couldn't stand what I saw happening to the other veterans, and I knew many that died. And so I worked with homeless veterans out in San Vicente the entire time the Veterans Row encampment was there, helped get them connected to services, move off the street into the new tiny home program. And it's really shocking to me that you can have 388 acres of land that was deeded to be a home for disabled veterans, and then they're illegally leasing it out, and they're not building the housing, and our veterans are sleeping and dying all over the streets of Los Angeles. What is the point of the law if our own federal government won't follow the law? And the result of our federal government not following the law has been veterans dying. I've sat with veterans' bodies on San Vicente Boulevard waiting for the morgue for them to come and pick them up. I've seen more veterans die on the street than I saw die while I was in Iraq. And obviously there's something wrong. This is affecting thousands of veterans. And one of the things that really gets me is in 2021, January of 2021, we went to a federal advisory board meeting, and I was trying to work with the VA to come up with some solutions to get the veterans moved off the street. And one of the big things that we needed was 24-hour same-day services, because what was happening is they were operating on these banker hours, and veterans were showing up after hours and being told to come back the following day. Then the VA police would tell them to leave the property. And as you could imagine, someone with mental health issues, physical disabilities, when they're turned away, then it just severs the trust. And I've seen veterans be turned away and then attempt to commit suicide. And that was one of the biggest things we pushed for when the veterans did move into the tiny homes, was to get 24-hour access to shelter. It still desperately needed to be improved. Anyway, in 2021, at this federal advisory board meeting, the VA didn't want to work with us, didn't want to listen to any of these recommendations, was acting like everything is fine, taking a stance that it's the veterans' faults, not wanting to step back and realize that maybe it's time that they try things differently. And I was given a recording of a senior VA executive that was involved in a negotiation with the UCLA baseball stadium. And I had roughly 50 veterans, homeless, dying on the street right outside the VA. And the VA is not working with me to get them in, but they're interested in letting UCLA expand and build a new baseball field. And in the recording, they're saying, don't let the veterans find out. They'll get up in arms. We have to find out how we're going to get ahead of this. This story's going to get out quicker than we want. And UCLA went forward with that construction. They built that stadium in the face of veterans that were dying out on the street on land that's meant to house veterans. And it just goes to show that the West Los Angeles VA for decades has been catering towards these wealthy special interests, non-veteran special interest groups, and putting that over the lives of veterans who they're supposed to be serving. There's supposed to be 770 units of housing built from the last lawsuit. That's, I mean, by this time, and they're not. And the units that are going to be opening up are delayed again. And then to top it off, our veterans that are 100% disabled are being told that they make too much money to qualify for the housing. And this has to do with the way the buildings are funded and AMI. You can't even get dental care at the VA unless you're 100% disabled. So the fact that our 100% disabled are being told they can't get housing on the property, that's absurd. Makes absolutely no sense. This definitely needs to change. The VA needs to put the veterans first. And from what I've seen, a lot of this is not hard to fix, but what it takes is proper engagement from the VA, from our politicians, and our politicians continually ignore this. I've been in congressional meetings when the House and Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs came in August of this year. There's always a concerted effort to avoid discussing anything that has to do with land use policy or the leases, even though there's OIG reports that state that it's illegal. Our congressman for our district, Congressman Ted Lieu, nowhere to be found. In the last 2 years, the entire time that encampment was going on, multiple veterans reaching out to meet with him to try to see if he would help us come up with solutions to get the veterans moved off the street. And in fact, the day when Secretary McDonough, Congressman Mark Takano came to Veterans Row before it was cleared, they took a walk down. Congressman Ted Lieu hid in the bus. He hid in the bus because he did not want to answer the questions that we had about what's going on in his district. And that is unacceptable. It's a disgrace, and this can't go on. And, you know, we've got a lot of stuff accomplished. I credit the veterans and everyone sitting behind here and advocates, you know, in Los Angeles, and for helping us get the veterans moved off the street and into that tiny home program that's there now. They should definitely be in buildings. And it was a huge fight just to get that open. But from what I see, you have the VA that makes decisions from up in their ivory tower, and our politicians, and they're not actually consulting with the peer supports or the different outreach workers or the advocates at the ground level. And they're definitely not consulting with the homeless veterans. And that's where you have a big breakdown. There's a huge lack of communication, and they're more concerned about getting sued by their illegal leases than getting sued by the veterans that are dying all over the streets. It makes no sense. So I just really hope that this is something that we can effectuate some real positive change, help our homeless veterans, because there's no reason that any homeless veteran should be on the street. And Los Angeles should not be our nation's capital when we have all this land, nation's capital of veteran homelessness, when we have all this land and all these empty buildings. And this has been going on for decades. You can read articles about it. You know, I've read letters from veterans from World War II talking about the same thing. So I'm hopeful and faithful that this time this will get fixed and we'll get our veterans taken care of. Thank you.
My name is Joshua Pettit. I'm also an Iraq veteran. I served in Iraq from 04-05, where 26 of my brothers were killed in action. Just to come home. I was at the VA since 2012. I've been in multiple programs there. Sit down. Yeah, thank you. Multiple programs there, including drug rehabilitation, which wasn't even needed at the time, but they didn't want to put me anywhere else. I've never received any kind of stable or permanent housing from the VA to this day. I did a year on Vet Row. I'm now in the tiny homes that which was almost burnt down. My house was about 4 houses down from the 4 that were burnt down. I've watched multiple veterans die out on Vet Row. Jay, Andre, Brian, right outside of the VA. You know, and to hit on what Rob said as well, the illegal land use. UCLA, they let us get into games for free, and that's supposed to appease my PTSD. That's supposed to help the nightmares I experience every night. I mean, it's we deserve better. We're gonna get better some way, somehow or another. We're gonna make a difference. Yeah, it's just unexcusable the way they just brush us off like this. They can you know, put in millions of dollars to the Brentwood school that's on there, but they can't do anything to help us get housing. So, you know, I'm not going to reiterate too much on what, you know, everything that Rob said is on point and I agree with. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. No, they're tool sheds. They're tool sheds. I have to, no bathrooms, the showers, you get hot water for about 30 seconds before it turns cold. I have to use a porta potty again. Like I'm back. I mean, it's, yeah, the conditions are slightly better than being out on that block. But even then I feel like, you have security walking by your hut, staring in your hut every time they walk by. Like I'm the criminal there. No, thank you for bringing that up. So by the way, they recently came through and took our microwaves, our fridges, tried to take our TVs. So and that was one of my concerns as well is getting into some place like this and them institutionalizing us again. I got to go through security checkpoints every time I come in. I can't have any guests in there. So there are locks on the doors, not that we have keys to. So, you know, if I want to go somewhere, I have to find somebody to actually come and unlock my hut, which could be nobody. I mean, if the staff isn't there and they don't have the keys, then you're locked out of your hut. So, you know, it's definitely not acceptable, but at least it's a step in the right direction, I guess I could say. Yeah, did I miss anything, Mark? All right, thank you.
My name is Kevin Seston. Shaz, thank you very much for sharing. Good foundation you have there. You know, back in 1978, when I get in the Army, something happened to me there where I had to go get discharged. I got an honorable discharge. But you know, not easy talking about getting raped and sodomized. You know, there's my 2 drill sergeants that I had no control over. So when I came back to the West LA campus up here in 2013, I was in the domiciliary, and you know, back when I went in the service, I don't think anybody has to go through that trauma like I had to go through. You know what I mean? I didn't deserve it. I didn't ask for it, but I accepted it. But the VA won't accept me. You know what I mean? Every time I go try to get housed, I make too much money. I can't go here. I can't go there. I've been turned down everywhere I go. Well, now it's my time to fight. And that's what we're doing here. You know, I believe in my fellow vets here that got my back. And they've always had my back since day one. Now, I can tell you this, is that I hope more vets come forward and get the stuff out. Because we never have to go through this again, ever. We don't want to. That's our choice now. I believe in the fight that we're doing here for our land, for our property, for everything. I believe that any veteran shouldn't have to be set out in the street in the tent like I was for 2 years out there in Veterans Row. I lived out there watching my friends die. I became a drug addict. I've been to 24 programs. You know what? Nothing's helped me. My PTSD is strong. I've had the MST. And the VA just wants to push it under the rug. Well, not no more. I'm tired of that. I hope and I pray each vet that comes forward gets what they got coming for them. We believe that we should get a housing over there. Why do we live in tents and UCLA has a building? That's what it calls for. I mean, we serve this country, now serve us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sade Anadiegua. Thank you. Hi, my name is Sade Anadiegua, and I'm a Navy veteran. SHARDAY. Anadiegua, ANYADIEGWU. Before I give my statement, I would like to say that I'm really touched by all the stories that I heard before me. And I'm disgraced about just the Veterans Administration not taking more empathy and sympathy to the veterans who have served and come in every day to volunteer and sit at that campus and be a part of a community that calls themselves the Veterans Administration. Many veterans survive traumatic, unusual, life-threatening, and life-changing events. And we're coming home with PTSD and traumatic events, brain injuries, and we're coming to the VA for help. The West LA campus was given to the VA for that purpose, to help veterans. The VA has to ensure that the appropriate living spaces for veterans are there so they could cope with their symptoms. They could have their service dogs to protect them from outbursts and PTSD symptoms, from having police called on them. You're giving us skills to deal with PTSD and mental health and putting us out in traumatic, triggering environments. That's ineffective healthcare. I enlisted in the Navy in 2008 because I wanted to create a better life and a world for myself. While in service, I endured a horrific, totally life-changing event to my mental health and the person I was before I entered into the Navy. After I was discharged, I spent years moving from crowded homeless shelters to less crowded temporary housing. I currently live in my car close to the VA. So far, this is the only way that I have found to have a space of my own, and I could be close to my healthcare, which is the VA. I don't want to live in my car forever. My trust was broken in the service, and now I run into life situations that trigger those same events that happen in the service. The VA uses the slogan, "I care," but the only way you could show care is to build that trust back with veterans by listening and providing housing that's connected to our healthcare. Today, we stand here to hold you to that promise, to make sure that you deliver on I care and truly care about health, veterans' health, and housing that is the fundamental to getting good health, stabilizing our health, getting better. Thank you.
Next up is Eve Hill. Eve, I'm trying to unmute you.
Maybe I can do it myself.
Okay, there we go.
All right. Thank you all. I'm one of the attorneys on this case, and many military veterans, as you've heard, return home with invisible wounds such as post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and others. And we as a country have committed. Excuse me?
Battle's one thing, but I'm going to tell you something. I come from a long family line of military veterans. My grandfather did 4 major campaigns in the Army. And he served the whole time in World War II. He was a man of honor. My Uncle Gil in Korea, he was a tanker with Freddie Fender, best friends. My uncle Tom, Vietnam veteran. He re-enlisted 4 times in Vietnam as a tunnel rat. And I was the only one from my generation to join the military. And my whole life, all I ever wanted to be was a soldier. So when I turned 17, I did it. And I dreamed as a kid of being a soldier. And I'm see my PTSD from the very beginning when I joined the military didn't come from combat. It came from my own platoon sergeant, my squad leader, my first duty station when I went in 1980. A fight had broken out downtown on the weekend, and it was a racial thing, I guess, against some Latinos and some whites, and it ended up in rioting. And shortly after that, we went to the field, and I know people that have been to Germany have been to Grafenwehr and Hornsfeld, and we were training. Well, I slept in the rear of the GP large tent, and the next thing that I knew, after we trained for the day, is somebody hit me in the head, and I just felt it hit me in the head while I was laying in my sleeping bag on my cot. And when I woke up, I was almost beat half to death. And they were burying me in the field. And I heard their voices, and I knew it was my platoon sergeant and my squad leader. They were both Vietnam veterans, and it was a racial thing, and it was whatever it was. It to this day, man, it still affects me that my life's dream was to soldier. All my family were soldiers, and that bothered me more than shooting anybody or taking a bullet or anything. That killed me. That killed my spirit. And then I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but up to now, I ended up in I came back to California about 2.5 years ago. I already had my housing in Colorado. I had moved to Colorado. I've been in and out of Brentwood, VA. I think, geez, I don't even remember. I think 1998 or something like that, or 1996. I've been in and out, and I've been service connected since then. But I'm yet to get any money. My rating is 000, and I start to do the appointments, and then all of a sudden nothing, or I don't know. It's been a drag. But I'm going to tell you, I came to the tiny houses because I came back 2 years ago to pick up my storage because I already had my housing and everything. I'm a peer support specialist. I had the job in 9 days, and I came to California to pick up my storage. And my everything I've owned, me and my mother, man, got stolen. They stole my U-Haul truck, and I ended up seeing some of my stuff on the streets with these homeless people, and I really wanted to hurt them, and I ended up going to Sylmar to turn myself into the mental ward because I wanted to hurt somebody. And so the next day I woke up in College Medical in Long Beach. I have no idea how I got there. And then they kept me there for 18 days and evaluated me. And when I got out, I went straight to the VA to Brentwood. And it was a Friday. And at, I think they take the last people in the, what do they call it, center? The Welcome Center in 258. I had nowhere to go. I got off the bus. They released me from the mental place, college medical for 18 days. I mean, I was broke down. I didn't know what I was going to do. They had stolen my truck when I first came to California. I mean, it's been a nightmare since I got back. So I went to the VA, got on the bus in Long Beach, came back. And I went to the VA and they didn't want to let me in. They said, you're 15 minutes too late. And it was a Friday. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I just lost everything I've ever owned in my life, me and my mother, in that U-Haul truck. And I just got out of the mental ward and I came to the VA and they said I was 15 minutes too late. So they gave me a lunch and a little packet of outside resources and shelters or whatever. And I just went and sit on the bench and ate a sandwich and like, I couldn't believe that they wouldn't help me. I mean, they were still on for another 45 minutes or whatever. So anyway, I had heard something, one of the people were talking about, they had the tent city up there. So I walked over there and I was able to get in, you know, by the grace of God. And one of the peer support guys took me in and they had me COVID tested and he stood overtime. And it was a vet. It was one of the peer support. And so I was in, they got me in. Well, the fire that happened there, I met a girl there. I was there, I was in, first we were in the tents and then they built the tiny homes. And I met my fiance right here, who was an Air Force veteran and an Army veteran. She went to the Army after the Air Force. And we clicked and we haven't been separated a day or an hour, I don't think, or maybe a couple hours. But what happened there this time when we went to the tiny homes, it took about 7 months for them to even meet up till I even met my case manager. Nobody knew who my case manager was for 7 months. And then finally we got one and we told them what we needed. Me and her moved into one of the bigger homes. And that fire happened because I had an e-bike and I was charging the battery like I did every night. And the battery blew up and it started the fire. So what they did was threw me and my girl out. Now we went in and you know we had our program going and we already had our housing voucher or whatever and we started looking for places. Then the fire happened. When the fire happened, they kicked us out. No exit plan, no nothing. They literally just kicked us out. They would not allow me in to get many of my things I mean, really, when the fire happened, we lost the most of everybody. Everything we had that me and my fiance accumulated in the past year for our move was burned. And they just kicked us to the curb and we went straight to the streets. I could not come on the premises. They let her go in to get our backpacks or whatever, because one of the organizations that were helping us because the fire gave us that $1,500 to buy clothes. I mean, we had absolutely nothing but the clothes we had on, and they told me I had to leave. We had to leave the premises, and they wouldn't let us back on there. And I was like, I couldn't believe it, you know. And so we've been trying to get our housing. And back and forth. The case manager, I mean, it's been all bad since then. You know, this has been the worst couple of years of my life, man, that I've had in a long time. And the only support I've gotten was from my brothers, these guys here. And there's been some organizations that have been trying to help us. I mean, we've had our place already, what, a little over 5 weeks. And we still don't even have beds. The case manager that was working with us, unreal. I mean, I would never in a million years think that our own, the people that work for the VA or that are supposed to be there for us abandon us. And we're still, me and my girl are still, we're struggling. And I really honestly didn't want to come today because I know how I feel. And I mean, they're building, they built the Metro Rail and they got a new stadium and they got whatever, man. And we can't get a couch or a refrigerator. And we've been in that place now in Lancaster in the worst neighborhood you could find. And they were complaining about that. She spent 6 hours to take us out there to look at 2 places. And we had to accept that. I mean, we had to surrender it. I needed a 3-bedroom because I'm trying to get I'm going to get custody. I'm not custody, but I'm going to be my mom's caretaker at 84 years old. And we just had to do what we had to do. So we took the 2-bedroom. They promised us that they would help us to find that we would just stay there temporarily and then whatever. And then now she's not even my case manager anymore. And I haven't even talked to the new case manager. And it's just, that's what's happening at the VA right now. And that's what I mean, I appreciate them, trust me, whatever they're doing, but the little help that we are getting, but it's been hard. I mean, when they took me and my girl to the streets and she's got ailments and she has no business to be on the streets. I mean, she doesn't. And you just didn't seem to care. I mean, she just put us to another counselor or whatever and says, well, I couldn't do anything. Our mail, we didn't get our mail, we didn't get our packages, the stuff that actually gave us, the organization had us to buy clothes and stuff, $1,500. The guard said no packages came, no letters came, or bank cards or nothing came. I don't know. It was my bank card's supposed to be there, but I doubt any of our mail got there. My case manager was supposed to pick up the mail and she never got one piece of mail in the 5 weeks that we've been gone. And I mean, something has to be done. Something's got to be done. Something has to be done, so I implore everybody, man, to do the right thing, man. There's a lot of people here, man, that are, that would gladly die for our country, and we come back and we have mental issues or whatever, man. And this is what we got. We got kicked to the curb. Literally, we got sent to the streets. I don't know what to say. Just thank you. That's it. That's PTSD, right?
Thank you, Samuel. The next speaker is Eve Hill with a partner at Brown, Goldstein and Levin.
So, hi, thank you all. You've heard about the wounds that these brave men and women and other veterans have returned from service with, and we as a country committed to treat those wounds. But without stable housing that's connected to treatment, these veterans cannot access the services they need and deserve because of their disabilities. Permanent supportive housing in the community, which is a recognized health service that provides stable housing and in-home services, is the answer. And it's supported by decades of evidence and practice across this country. And it's recognized even by the VA itself as what is needed to provide healthcare services for veterans with disabilities. Now, this case comes up because the Supreme Court found in Olmstead versus LC that our federal disability rights laws include an integration mandate, meaning that governments cannot require people to enter institutions in order to get services for their disabilities. And the federal government has enforced that obligation against states for over a decade, but has done nothing to ensure that it complies with its own programs. So by failing to provide adequate in-home services and permanent supportive housing, both on the West LA campus and around the community, the VA is doing exactly that. Right now, veterans with disabilities like serious mental illness and traumatic brain injury can only get meaningful access to treatment services if they live in a psychiatric hospital, a shed, transitional housing, or a homeless shelter. Their only other option is to live on the streets, too often without treatment. And that violates Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The VA is also making it impossible for veterans with these disabilities to meaningfully access the healthcare services that are on the West LA campus. The services provided on the West LA campus are more robust than anywhere else in the area and are available 24/7, 365. But the VA's housing voucher program is utterly failing to help veterans find housing where they can access those services, or even to provide in-home services or transportation from their far-flung homes to the West LA campus. And this failure to ensure meaningful access to people with disabilities because of their disabilities is discriminatory. Now, the VA promised to provide these services 7 years ago. Now it says it never had the power to provide them. Just another in a history of broken promises. And nothing prevents the VA from doing its duty towards our veterans with disabilities. They have the land, they have the funds, all they lack is the will. And I personally believe that Americans across the country join us in calling for the VA to do its duty on behalf of those who have already done theirs. And I'm proud to stand with these veterans and with all Americans who demand the VA fulfill its promises. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Next up is Kara Mahoney with Inner City Law Center. Directing a training with Inner City Law Center. Sorry, Kara.
That's okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Since 1998, Inner City Law Center has served unhoused veterans who have disabilities resulting from their military service. What we do is provide free legal representation to our veteran clients that helps increase their income and paves the way to stable housing. Unfortunately, we have seen time and time again how challenging it is for many of our clients to secure permanent housing that allows them to meaningfully access VA treatment and supportive services. Our clients put their lives, bodies, and minds on the line for their country and have returned home with serious disabilities. The VA's West LA campus is the heart of VA healthcare in Los Angeles, and it's a literal lifeline for veterans with severe disabilities. This campus could and should also be a home for veterans, a truly comprehensive and integrated community for those who have served our country and fallen on hard times. But the VA has not upheld its end of the bargain. Veterans like those here today and so many others in Los Angeles should not end up living on the streets, in their cars, or in sheds in order to access treatment and healthcare services, while the land that was promised to them as a soldier's home is misused and underutilized. We fight hard alongside our clients to win them monthly income and VA healthcare so they have the best chance possible at obtaining permanent homes. But because there is scant housing for veterans on the West LA campus, our clients cannot move there. And instead, they're forced to move so far from the West LA campus that they can't keep up with their mental health appointments. And unconnected from medical care, they're far less likely to be able to stay housed. For other veterans, we've seen them become so desperate to be close to their medical providers that they pitch a tent or sleep on the street near the West LA campus. This is the case with our client, Charday Anadiegwu, who's here and provided her own statement. Inner City Law Center began working with Ms. Anadiegwu on her individual VA benefits claim starting in 2016. And over the past 6 years, we've watched her struggle to find suitable housing while also trying to heal from the military and build a new life. The fact that Ms. Anadiegwu must live in her car in a parking lot on the West LA campus is unacceptable. Ms. Anadiegwu and others like her should not have to struggle like this anymore. This lawsuit comes at a time when Los Angeles has been forced to confront the homelessness crisis in our city. The VA has an ethical and a legal duty to care for our veterans. And the 388 acres of land that was donated to the VA for the purpose of being a soldier's home needs to be dedicated to just that, providing permanent supportive housing for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have questions. Please share questions in the chat.
with a country that needs to hear these stories and take sides.
Mark, the question is, why do you think the VA has continued to refuse to build housing on its campus?
I think that's it. The question is, why does the VA not build housing for these individuals having 388 acres that was specifically deeded for that purpose? Ample land. Administrators themselves live on this land. As you've heard, there have been leases for oil drilling, athletic fields for private schools, UCLA. One point there was a rent-a-car place. Why? I don't think there's any question what the answer to that is. Because they don't care. Because they don't care. Because they regard men and women like those you've heard from this morning as disposable. They've served their purpose for the government, and now the government chooses to fail them. What else could explain it? It can't be that they don't have enough money. They have $260 billion budget. It can't be because they don't know the need. You've heard the need. It can only be because that they've made a choice. And as you've heard so eloquently from each and every one of these speakers, if you just cared, if the government just cared, if the government just respected what these individuals have given for all of us, then of course you would construct that housing. And it wouldn't be a shed without a pot to pee in. And it wouldn't be a shed that had no capacity to provide any sort of decent living conditions. And it certainly wouldn't be the street or tents they had to scrounge up themselves. The vets you've heard talk today have had to share space with rats and vermin. The only explanation that can actually address what has happened is that these individuals to their government and to the VA are disposable, and that they do not care about their well-being, the well-being of their loved ones, and all of us who support these vets. And I welcome anybody else who would like to answer that question as well. Rob?
Let me just read the question here.
It's the same question. It's why do you think the VA has continued to refuse to build housing on its campus?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the location of that land. And in a lot of people's eyes, it's some of the most valuable real estate in the country. It's located right next to Brentwood, Westwood, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills isn't too far away. You have a lot of you have a lot of wealthy people and influential people that live in Brentwood. And I know because I had many challenges with some of the community councils in the neighborhood when the homeless veteran encampment was outside the VA. And I don't think they want veterans there. They spent a lot of money, imagine lobbying Congress. I know UCLA and Brentwood School do. And there's a lot of influential people that go to Brentwood School and UCLA. And of course, our politicians want to cater to them because it's very easy to dismiss a homeless veteran, someone that's mentally ill, someone that has disabilities. And I think that is one of the big reasons why a lot of this is happening, the location of the land, these large, powerful entities on the property, and greed. I mean, greed, and that's what it comes down to. The VA just needs the will, they need to get it done, and Congress needs to engage this situation properly.
I think it comes down to accountability. My career after Vietnam started at Brentwood, now West LA or whatever. And it's just accountability. It's one thing. I spent 15 years in the VA. I had my own Vietnam vet unit, which became National Vet Center program. after 7 or 8 years. And everything that I've heard today, the pain it causes me is that I've watched it for 51 plus years. And I can't understand why there's no accountability for the second largest bureaucracy in our country. And there's no excuse. I'm here today because I'm taking probably my last shot at, can somebody be accountable? Can they get in touch with the veterans' needs? The first paper I wrote at a national conference in the mid-70s was new services. I mean, new patients need new services. This is a new war. It was a new war in Vietnam. And now we've had several wars after that. We have to address their needs. It's a bottom line, whether it's mental health, medical, whatever, education. There should be someone there, just like at our office, when someone walks in, to embrace them, acknowledge their service, and say, how can I help you? I set the Vet Center program up under Max Cleland and Jimmy Carter. The statement Max came up with that we advertised in 79 through my tenure there was, may I help you? It seems to be a joke when I hear that. And who do you talk to? Who do you ask that? The main thing is that somebody's has got to be accountable. I don't know. I've heard about decentralizing the system or whatever, but whatever the system looks like, it's got to be a system for, by, and always for those that have served. I mean, we can go from the homeless all the way up. It's time that someone took control of this and made it accountable and let it serve. If you look at the inscriptions that Lincoln wrote on the central office in Washington, D.C., to serve the widows and those that have borne the brunt of battle. I think they need to look at that signage, that statement that made by Abraham Lincoln, and rethink what the heck are they doing?
Additional questions?
Yeah, the next question is, your suit is asking the VA to build around 3,000 units of permanent supportive housing, correct? How much money do you believe that would cost?
Whatever it would cost, it's far less than what it's going to cost not to house these individuals. And it's far less than what the country asked of them to serve the country in time of war and in time of need. Eve, do you want to respond to that some more?
I do. Actually, I want to be clear, we're not asking the VA to build 3,000 new units of permanent supportive housing. Part of the housing that they need to build, not part of the housing they need to do is vouchers that help people use existing housing. So it's not all a matter of building new housing. There's plenty of housing in the world. And whatever it costs will be less than it's costing now. Permanent supportive housing has been shown to be cost effective over and over and over again. People are already using more resources than they need to use if they actually have homes to live in, and they have better access to services that are not on an emergency basis or in a jail or on the streets. All of those things cost a great deal more money than housing people and providing them with services they can actually access.
As you've heard, it's estimated that there are between 22 and 40 vets each day who commit suicide. You've heard from the individuals this morning, they have seen those suicides and they have seen deaths on the streets. So with all respect to that question, the real question to ask the VA is, how much is each vet's life worth? How much is each vet's life worth? How much is 4,000 homeless vets' lives worth? Because that's the stakes of this case. And that's the stakes of their lives. And that's really what this is all about.
Okay, any final questions? Please put them in the chat. Looks like that may be the last one. I'll wait a little longer.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Extraordinary group of people, and those who you have not met, but we're eager to take your questions as this lawsuit proceeds, and it's our hope that this lawsuit never sees the inside of a courtroom, and that, as you've heard over and over again, that the president, the VA, secretary of the VA say that this matter should not be litigated. It's time for the VA to do what is conscionable, what is ethical, and what is legally required. Okay, thank you all.